In fact, the first truly global trade, going back and forth, was the trade in human beings. Or the kidnapping of people from the Western Hemisphere, sending them to Europe, and then the kidnapping of African people, the destruction of societies in Western and Central Africa because of the slave trade. And African societies had not passed through an epoch of slavery. It was introduced from outside by European people to the African continent. Not that there had not been in a smaller form, but in a large scale. Slavery had not existed on a large scale in most parts, not all, most parts of Africa. It was introduced to it through this barbaric institution of slavery, which spread slaves into the Western Hemisphere, and the wealth of the country being built off of that. And in order for them to do that, an ideology of the supremacy of peoples who came from different nations and spoke different languages had to be used in the United States. Where you could come from Ireland and be oppressed in Ireland, and a generation after, you lose your Irishness and be adopted into the whiteness, into the dominant sector of U.S. society. It is important for us to begin to talk about that and what that actually means, because then we draw our understanding of our duties as revolutionaries. And I'm going to begin to wind up because I've spoken over my time. But I want to get to the economic conditions of super exploitation and what exists in the oppressed communities today. Because, as I said, the wealth of the nation was built through super exploitation, through chattel slavery that exists, but also through de facto slavery, the peonage laws, where you can be black and be walking around, and you can be picked up, put in jail, bailed out by a white person who then will use you as a slave. And then there was the sharecropping system. And there's many different periods of the use of oppressed people to super exploit, to build up super wealth of capitalists, and using them against the dominant sector to keep wages at a certain, to drive wages down in general, and to get white workers to think that they had more in common with their bosses who were oppressing and exploiting them too than they had with their fellow workers who may have been of a different nationality. And that's unfortunate that has happened in history, but it's a fact of history that is what has happened. But what do we say regarding the right of oppressed people to chart their own course? And I need about 2 more minutes, if that's okay, 2-3 more minutes, if that's okay, and then I will wrap up. Because there was something that happened and we had a nuanced view regarding the Obama phenomenon, President Obama. We understood where it came from. Many of us, when he spoke at the Democratic National Convention in 2004, thought that they were positioning him to run. And it was sort of a masterstroke when you think about it. You've become despised around the world because of 8 years of idiocy and eloquence. And then you say, hey, we're not so bad. We have this black guy here and he's our president. But it was something for black people to be able to see that. And you had kids, and many of us saw these kids were running around, and they began to think, maybe one day I can be president. After all these years of being told that they were less, and it's not that we were any less oppressed. In fact, as a wake-up call, after Obama was elected in 2009, the police shot down Oscar Grant. So just in case there was any question of repression not existing, the police showed, yes, we still hate you because you were black. But it's important for us to understand that desire and where it came from and be in solidarity, because oppressed people, supporting the right of self-determination of oppressed people means that you don't go to an oppressed community and say, well, if you're not for socialism, then we can't stand with you. Even Lenin said that oppressed people have a right to determine their future for themselves. It's about political freedom. right to express their political will. And if it's black capitalism, then that is actually a step forward from regular, plain old white racist capitalism. And we hope that history continues to advance forward. So it's important to understand that fact. And there's a lot that I actually had prepared to say. I didn't write this down. These are just notes, and they might look crazy to some people, but this is how my mind works. But I do want to quote from Amilcar Cabral. And though you might read, it's hard to find actually out that he was a Marxist, but you have to read his words very carefully to understand that he indeed was a Marxist and was a Leninist, and he praised Lenin to the hilt, and because he uses our understanding, the method of examining phenomena in history, the dialectical method, he uses that to talk about the culture and the struggle against Portuguese colonialism and the Guinea-Bissau people. He uses that. He talks about it quite a bit. But the quote I want to leave you with, and I guess that I can talk about the rest of this through the question and answer section, is from Amilcar Cabral, is that in our view, the foundation of national liberation lies in the inalienable right of every people to have their own history, whatever the formulations adopted in international law. The aim of national liberation is therefore to regain this right, usurped by their imperialist domination, namely the liberation of the process of development of the national productive forces. So national liberation exists when and only when the national productive forces have been completely freed from all kinds of foreign domination. The liberation of productive forces and consequently of the ability freely to determine the mode of production most appropriate to the evolution of the liberated people necessarily opens up new prospects for the cultural process of the society in question by returning to it all its capacity to create progress. And I wanted to sort of use that to sort of support the point that I was making before about national liberation and for people to determine for themselves their future, because though we are within the United States, black people and other oppressed people are colonized people. And if, as colonized people, determine that the best way forward for themselves is separation, then any revolutionary who is worthy of support or any organization, and from my understanding, I would not join any organization unless it supported the right of oppressed people to determine their future for themselves without being told what to do and how to view things. So that's it, and I hope that I can continue to bring forth the other points that I had. So thank you all. Power to the people. This is a great class, and be there on June 16th. I think that will be a very groundbreaking series of classes that we'll be developing. Thank you.